Everyone can agree the Jets need a new quarterback heading into 2023, but how you get that done, that is up for debate. Do you go with Aaron Rodgers? Do you go with Derek Carr? Could there be two factions within one Jets drive? Jets, Jets, Jets! Welcome to Jets Talk. My name is Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, we're talking a little bit more about the Robert Saleh press conference, specifically about a few questions that were asked that I had people just blasting my DMs about. I had to talk about it. So, are there different opinions on who the Jets' veteran quarterback option should be going into 2023? Could there be a little bit of divide going on over at One Jets Drive? So let's follow the line of questioning, and then we'll talk about it here. The first question, what would the Jets do, and how do you handle bringing in a veteran quarterback that might be here a little longer than just 2 years?
That's a good question, Rich. It's you can't look at it that way. You guys know me. It's stay in the moment and try to do everything we can to help everyone get better, be the best version of themselves they can be. So whether, we bring in a guy who's in his early 30s and he's going to be here for a while, the focus is to just help him get better as best as he can. And if his best gets to be showcased here as a New York Jet, awesome. If not, it's still awesome, because all we want is what's best for him and his development. No different than any other player on our roster. That's our job to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help them find ways to reach their max potential as coaches. And then Joe and his staff, their job is to continue to push the envelope and finding players who can continue to maintain that standard. So, so to answer your question, I don't have it for 2 years from now. I don't know what that means. I just know our focus is to try to help him get as best as he can.
Now, that was interesting. You heard Robert Saleh talk about the possibility of him being somewhere else. He uses him too many times. Is it Zach Wilson? Is it Derek Carr? Is it something, totally different? And I'm totally butchering this whole thing. So it's a little tough to really slice it all apart. But to me, it sounded like if you bring in Derek Carr and you have Zach Wilson on the roster, you're going to try and get him to be the best version of himself as possible, because we don't know where we're going to be 2 years from now. But that also means maybe we're looking at possibly moving on from him in the event that he is not here in New York in 2 years' time. And I think that's kind of exactly where Robert Saleh was going, was like, hey, look, I can't read into the future. He said that at the very end of the clip. Does Zach Wilson wind up staying? Does he not? Who knows? But the media decided they perked up their ears when they heard those comments made by him. So they followed that up with, what are your thoughts on Mike White?
Oh, yeah. No, Mike, I know, feel like I probably should be talking about him more. Mike deserves every bit to be talked about. He should be on this roster also. And he's, we carried 3 last year, but again, he's going through his process, and it's just something that obviously we're keeping close tabs on. So
Mike White deserves to be here. That's, maybe it's just coach speak and every player deserves to be here, but Mike White appears to be a team favorite. That's sort of what we saw over the course of the last part of the season this year with the t-shirts and everything. And he deserves to be on this roster. I think he's good enough to be that perennial backup that I think a lot of us all sort of felt we would love him in that role as. We just don't trust the health portion of it. So would you want to bring Mike White back? It seems like if you were to try and bring Mike White back, then what does that mean for Zach Wilson? Because clearly you want to have him get some reps. And if you have Mike White back there, that's less reps for the kid you're trying to develop behind the veteran quarterback coming in. I also think Mike White has a really good opportunity to go to LA and follow Mike LaFleur over there, sit behind Matthew Stafford for a year or two. He's got the back injury, so maybe maybe he could be the heir apparent to Stafford when he's eventually all set and done there. But it feels like to me, maybe Robert Saleh prefers Mike White to Zach Wilson on the roster right here. The following question that really kind of summed it all up was, would you carry 3 quarterbacks?
If you can hold it, for sure. Like, quarterbacks are gold. I mean, it's if you have 3 guys that you have full faith in, then yeah, absolutely, you hold them. But you don't want to hold 3 quarterbacks just to hold 3 quarterbacks. But I said it last year. I thought we had 3 really good quarterbacks between Flacco, Zach, and Mike. And if we're presented with that same opportunity again, obviously you'd love to keep it that way.
Quarterbacks are like gold. If you can have all 3, understand your offense, and you can hold on to all 3 of them, great. We would love to be in that sort of position. Clearly, with the Jets having quarterback injuries and issues, it's very clearly a very important position to have locked down. But Are you going to carry 3? I don't see how you do that. With both Rodgers and Carr, both guys are, virtually never injured. I think Derek Carr has played in 142 of 144 possible games, and Aaron Rodgers, I believe, has played every game for the last 5 years. So if you're bringing in one of those two guys, you're saying, okay, the backup quarterback is probably not playing a whole heck of a lot. In which case, in my mind, I've always sort of envisioned that to be Zach Wilson, so he can be that second fiddle. And then if there's an injury, then you kind of reshuffle it and figure it out there. But this whole topic of, is there some sort of power struggle? To me, it feels like the coaching staff would prefer the now option in Derek Carr so they can get all their other ducks in a row. With Douglas, I can see him wanting Aaron Rodgers. And that's not to say I don't think Saleh wants Rodgers, but I think there's certain headaches that come with Aaron Rodgers that maybe you don't want to deal with as a coaching staff, whereas the GM, you may not necessarily deal with those directly all the time, but then it also helps you preserve your number 2 overall pick in possibly, what could be one of the worst picks of all time if you're subscribing to that kind of mindset here, and that he cannot get better. But I think Zach Wilson can get better. And I think that's what Joe Douglas kind of sees in Aaron Rodgers and the value that he may have in just 2 years' time to be able to go back to your former signal caller and really allow him to hit that ceiling. Because we heard from Robert Saleh the other day and Douglas, they think Zach can get to that point. And you hope he can. But do you go with Aaron Rodgers? Do you go with Derek Carr? There's value in both. There's costs to both of them. You have Aaron Rodgers where you could develop Zach, or you could have Carr for the foreseeable future, but maybe there's not quite as high of a ceiling if that's, where you kind of fall on that. It's fascinating to see this. I don't think there's really much of a divide. I think the two of them, more so than likely, understand, our longest shot at success might be with the long shot of Zach working out. Now, that being said, Saleh is in the room all the time, and he sees the progression that Zach does or does not make, so he may be a little more pessimistic than maybe the hopeful side of Joe Douglas. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of this. I don't think Zach's getting traded. I don't think his trade value is overly high. I think Zach's here at least through the preseason where you can build up his trade value. Joe Douglas does not trade players at a loss. So for me, I think Zach's going to be here. I think he's ultimately going to be quarterback 2 to whoever we wind up bringing in. And this is not really a big story, or at least not as big a one as we're all making it out to be. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think this is a big story? Do you think there's a divide in the locker room or the building in general? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.